but they know where they are and they know what they need to do. The people are just so resilient, and they seem focused on recovery. We had a meeting with a brothers meeting we attended, and all the brothers, they had a plan. They know what they were needing to do and what they wanted to do, and they were just really well organized, and I was really impressed. They had one young brother, his name is Craig Hamilton, and I mean, he was one of the younger men, but he was on top of everything. He was sort of running the meeting and stuff, and I was just really impressed by him. The congregation's leaders are, like I said, they have a plan, and the congregation is really supportive. When we had our Sunday worship service, it was great. I mean, the singing, the message, everything was inspiring. And it was just a great trip, and it's something I'll never forget. The kids are just lovely. I mean, there was Ella. I can't pronounce her name, but she's the baby girl. It was she fell in love with Travis. I mean, Travis was real good with the kids. They were playing cards and stuff, and I looked over and they were just piled up on Travis like a bunch of puppies. So they really did love Travis, and that was great. And just to see that the kids were happy and moving on, and that's the thing that they were prepared to move on. They weren't dwelling on their conditions, and it was a great trip. And before I leave, I just want to also speak on, that island. They have no industry. They depended on travelers for their main income, and their government does not encourage industry. If anything, they discourage it. I mean, they have high duty. A lot of they import anything. They have 48% duty on most of their imports. So they do not encourage industry of any sort. So, and I want to just leave you with, again, that the message I want to give is that, they still need a lot of help there, and we really do need to assist all we can. But also, if we had the heart that these people had, this would be just a great congregation, because, they still come to church in a building that doesn't have a roof. We had our service under the tarp, and we had a pretty nice crowd. So, but again, even though things seem to be sad, we also saw that the leaves and stuff are coming back on the trees. Things are getting better. So we just need to assist all we can. So that's my part.
On September 18th, 2017, Hurricane Maria started the day as a mild Category 1 hurricane. By the evening, when it struck Dominica, it was one of the most powerful Category 5 storms to ever directly impact land. The island was devastated. Entire buildings, like this one, seen in Castle Comfort, were washed away. Boulders and trees, raining down through 365 rivers on the small island, were merciless. The people were unprepared for what they faced that evening as this massive storm rushed through valleys like the Czech Hall Valley, washing away homes and, unfortunately, lives. The Bridgewood Church of Christ has been involved with Dominica for almost 4 decades, and we witnessed firsthand the destruction of the island. 90% of the structures were left heavily damaged, many without roofs, all with flood damage. The damage was unlike anything we had ever seen before.
When I came back, the entire door was ripped off. Wind was coming through, so I had to secure that door. We went upstairs. There was so much water coming in that we had no choice but to go in one room, eldest daughter's room, Shalila. That's where we took refuge. They were, everybody was crying, screaming. I just had to be brave for them. And, we went into the room, we sat down on the mattress on the floor, and I said to them, I have done all I could, and the rest is in God's hands. So if we die tonight, we die as a family. Let's trust in God. I know you all are scared, but let's transfer that fear into trusting God, and we pulled out the some book and our Bibles, and we began singing.
Maria, September 18th. That was the hardest moment in my life. The water, the wind, it was terrifying. I had to run for shelter in our middle room. Windows were just bust, doors wide open, and a lot of rain, water just coming in. And the noise was very awful. I swear say it was a baby crying, the sound, and then there was a time that I gave up. Because it seems that there was nowhere to shelter. So that was the most terrifying moment in my life. I went through Hurricane David. I saw Erica, but Maria was the worst.
What you heard from Elijah and from Joe is just a sample of the stories of survival that we heard while we were in Dominica. Maria was a brutal storm. It is our opinion that it will be years before the island returns to any state of normalcy. It appears that most of the island could be without electricity for at least a year. It is our purpose as a church to help rebuild the Massac Church of Christ, a church building that our congregation built and put a roof on just a few years ago. The men have sought advice from a structural engineer, and we have a solid plan for helping the congregation rebuild their church building so they can be an active part of the community there in Massac. We also had the opportunity to visit the remote community of Good Hope, where Brother Edward Garraway ministers to the congregation there. This small area was heavily damaged, and the foundation that you can see is where the church building once stood. We would like to help our brothers and sisters in Good Hope rebuild their small building so that they can once again join together to worship God. What we did see among all of the damage was a positive spirit of perseverance that could not be missed. The people of Dominica are strong. They will pick up and clean up from the damage. They will rebuild homes and lives. All around us, we saw the evidence of hope, the promise of God, and construction, progress being made on the island. We hope that you'll join with us in helping our brothers and sisters in Massac and in Good Hope as they rebuild their church buildings, their lives, and their communities.
I've been asked to, first of all, let me offer something in my defense. I was embarrassed when we walked into Joe and Teresa's home, which is associated with the church here. It's under the church building itself. And they started assigning John and Travis to a room to put their blow-up mattresses on the floor. And I found a place for Wallace for his blow-up mattress in the living room, and took me down the end of the little hallway, opened the door, and there was a nice bed. Now, I didn't know until today that these guys were jealous. But a good time was had by all as we enjoyed the fellowship with these brothers and sisters, and especially Joe and Coy and Elijah, who was a part of the interview here. When we first started going to Dominica in the 80s, the early 80s, the first time I went was in 81, but Brother Sexton and his wife had gone, I think, the year before. Elijah was a little boy. About this tall. And the first time I saw him, as we were coming up on the other side of this valley behind the church, you could see it in the film there. It's where they used to live, on the other side of that valley. As we came up, the first time I saw Elijah sitting beside the road playing with a little car out in the yard. This is Elijah now. He has 3 children. Is it 3 girls? 2 girls. He has an important job with the medical school there that's on the island. And part of my fear is what's coming in the future. Part of that medical school is going to relocate off of the island. And I don't know, they're already talking about in the paper and so forth that they're going to start laying off some people. And so I don't know what the future brings for the people in Dominica as a whole. I know that Joe touched base on the fact that he was there for Hurricane David and the other hurricanes that have hit the island between that and Marie, and said this one was the worst, and it was the worst that I had observed myself. We first went down in 81 after David had hit, and there was a year or two there gap between our going down. But the island then was devastated. All the crops were ruined. But this one, I really was astounded at the impact that this one had. I saw portions of the island I'd never seen before. And the reason why is the jungle was gone because the hurricane had stripped it from the mountains. The mountains were higher than I ever seen them before. The trees were just pencils now sticking up. And you could see from one mountain to the other and across the valleys. And I don't know, I was amazed to see the green already starting to appear again. And that was one of the things that had lifted their spirits as a people, to see the green emerge back on the island, because they thought, as they saw it in the aftermath, that all of that was gone, but it's not. Being the type of island that it is, the future holds well for the physical aspect of it. It's the people that we're concerned about. Jobs are not going to be available. They're not available now. Most of these people are farmers, raising crops like coconuts, bananas, and grapefruit, and oranges, and lemons, and all of these that take the climate of the island. And so who knows what the future holds? I know that their spirits are strong. Wallace had commented on the men's meeting that we attended among the brethren there at the Massac Church. And I was impressed with their orderliness, the way they conducted business, and their look to the future. They have no thought of drawing back. Their thought is to press ahead and do what needs to be done to preach the gospel and reach the people of the island. Looking back on the history of the church, going back to the 60s, when Brother Theolord and Joe were converted and began to take a strong hand in preaching and teaching and establishing congregations on the island, the church has grown tremendously from 1 or 2, 3 people originally to where it is today. There were 9 congregations. The one that John had in the presentation was wiped out. It's Castle Bruce, and it's gone, just taken right off of the foundation and washed into the ocean. And so there were several congregations that were hit with almost the same amount of tragedy. And so there's a lot of work to be done. And Joe and Teresa, not only from the standpoint of the congregation, but Teresa's business, as Wallace had touched upon it, which was up in the mountains in Corona. She deals with the tourist trade, and she's got a lot of work to restore that to where she can start that again. Years ago, in thinking about Joe and Teresa and the way things were on the island, the eldership here, this was before we'd merged with Meadowbrook, but we encouraged Teresa, we call her Coy, to establish herself as a businesswoman, because if something happened and Joe passed away, she would be left with no income at all. They have no Social Security like we do here, no way. And so when someone from the family is taken out, it's just an absence of income for the family. And so she took our advice and she opened up this little cafe up in the mountains where the tourist buses could stop and the people could get off and go out under a shelter and have the variety of fruit juices that she served and some other things that were indigenous to the island. And so we have a concern with her being able to open that business again. That's another thing that we're concerned about. Keep these people in your prayers. They love the Lord. And I must say, backing up what Wallace said, they genuinely love this congregation because of the support that we've given them for 30 plus years. And we'll continue to do so based upon your generosity and your willingness to spread the gospel through the world.
All right, so where's John? I kind of need his phone. He was, yeah. Oh, he's up there. All right, well, let's see. He's going through it. Oh, there we go. All right, so this is the church building there in Massac. It's the one we built, and so this is what we're looking at. Yeah, this sign. This is the sign that while we were down there the first time back in 2012 with the college group, Brinson and Lauren painted this for the congregation. And so it luckily was not destroyed. Let me stand off to the side and see if the mic will work that way. It won't. This is the front of the building. And so as you can see, the front doors were taken off of it in the hurricane. They actually think that is how the roof went. And I think that's how it did go. The front door gave way and there wasn't any bracing for it. And so it just blew open the front door, and because they found the front door way back in the building. And so I just went in, and then the pressure just exploded the roof and it was gone. So that's pretty much what happened. This is the inside of the auditorium. And so as you can see, there is a lot of the roof is gone, the ceiling is just gone. The only thing that's left there is the boards for the supports and stuff like that. Oh, the roof projectors aren't good. And so the ceiling fans in there, they've been completely destroyed. All the everything in the top part of the building has been destroyed. This is that little bitty mound right there in the middle of it. That is actually some concrete. So since the roof has been torn off, it just rains down inside the building. And Joe and Coy's house is the next floor below. So all the water that's on the floor, you can see a little bit of it right there, actually just seeps through it and down into their kitchen. And it was getting in her stove and all the stuff down there. So they did a couple minor repairs to seal up some cracks on the floor upstairs. Yeah, you can't really see it that well. So on the outside of the building, not the main doors, but the side doors, those were wooden, and there's just part of it left right there. The rest of it got torn away during the hurricane, and so that's actually one of the improvements that we're going to talk about here in this report that we get. And these are the windows. They're also looking at improving these. So basically, every single one of them's broke. There's a few panes left in them, but all it really is just glass in a holder, and that's all it is. So it's nowhere near hurricane resistant or anything like that. They just shattered. This is the awning on the outside of the building. There's a porch, and you can walk out. It's not on the front; it's on the side, and the roof is gone there too. So. And this is just, it's nothing super important. It's just that this shows kind of how the hurricane went. You know, here's just a piece of roofing that just went clean through the house. This is back to the auditorium here. This is what it looks like from the pulpit spot. And so just another view of the auditorium. And there's the front doors. Those do open all the way, and that's kind of why it failed. Those doors actually open up into 4 pieces, and so it's not a super secure door. And the locks that they had on there just failed and gave way, and then also they weren't really well anchored to the wall. I think this is the best picture of the electrical that we can get. The rest of it, you can see it dangling, but I think this is the best perspective of it. It's utterly destroyed. The electrical is going to have to be redone. And then this one, this is not the church in Massac. This is the church in Good Hope. And when we got there, I'd never been here, so this is my first time. I never saw it, what the church looked like there in Good Hope. But it's a small little building, probably 15 by 10, maybe 20 by 10. So it's a small building. And Bob, do you know how many people they have?
I think about 20.
About 20 people. He said it's packed, and they're standing on the outside looking in through the windows for worship. So small little building, but it serves a good purpose there. And so we kind of, when we saw that, we looked at picking that up as part of the project on this. So, Brother Joe had a engineer come out and look at the building, and he kind of, whoa, man. All right, and looked at the building, and he wrote up a report for us, or for Joe, of all the improvements that needed to be done, and some of the things. The good thing about this report is he looked into the future of what could happen in the next 10, 15 years just to make this building even more desirable. And so that includes things like air conditioning and then buying the property in front of the building for parking. But this is normally a $5,000 summary right here on the island. And Brother Edward, I don't know where he's a member of, but he handed it to Joe, and he said, paid in full with love and admiration for Joe. So Joe has a major influence on the island there, and has really done a major impact there. Everywhere you go, people know him. That's just how it is. But some of the observations that the engineer looked at, the pitch of the roof is too flat, so they want to take that and make a steeper pitch. They're looking at 35 to 40 degree pitch on the roof, and they said that would make it much more hurricane resistant. Also, the ridge is a 2x6, and so they're wanting to take that and make it a 2x8. And that's just for strength, and I completely agree with that one. The interior ceiling was taken away. As you can see in the picture, there's no roof, no ceiling. Fans are broke. The electrical was compromised, and so they're going to have to pull that. Yeah, and so that's the most purlins were blown away. So he wants to raise the roof to a minimum of 30 to 45 degree angle. He wants to use a ridge of 2x8s treated lumber, which is good because the wood that's up there right now is not treated. So water and moisture will damage it. The other thing was replace the windows to what is called Chinese windows. I don't know why they call them Chinese windows. We would call them hurricane resistant windows. I'm thinking they get them from China. Maybe I guess that's where they get it. They didn't know. They just call them Chinese windows. So, but yeah, we're looking at hurricane resistant windows, which wouldn't withstand what this hurricane gave. I think it was 205-mile-an-hour winds is what they had on the island. And so hurricane resistant windows would not support this, but that's where we came in. And during our meeting, we decided to also look at putting shutters on the outside that can lock. And so that will help a lot in stopping that. You can't make it hurricane proof. Hurricanes are a force of nature, so they can do what they want. But also use solid doors on the outside that are not wood. We're wanting to go to metal doors, and that's just due to the fact that they're not going to be susceptible to the weather as much as a wooden door was, and they lost all of them. Also, the rafters were made out of 2x4s, and they're wanting to pump them up to 2x6s to meet the new requirements on the island. They're changing a bunch of requirements and building down there right now because of Hurricane Erica or Maria. And so that's one of the things. One of the things that they're going to do for the roof is they're going to do it at a 40-degree pitch, but then also on the awnings, they're going to make that a separate roof so that if the winds from a hurricane get up under it, it just blows off the awning and doesn't just peel back the whole roof. So it's not it's not one continuous piece, it's two, so then it will give way and not just tear the roof off the building. That's the idea of it. Also, we're looking at putting screws on the ends that are every corrugation. So instead of just doing it, 2 screws at the end of each sheet, there's going to be more at the end because that is where it's most susceptible to the wind. If you lose it there, you're just going to lose the roof all the way up. And so that's going to be doing that. Some of the things that he recommended to make this a little cheaper was reusing as much of the electrical wires as possible, which should be possible. We don't know yet until they get in there and pull them and look and test them. But a lot of it was in concrete walls, and so there's not a lot you can do to that. And then they're talking about salvaging the rafters on the roof to see if they can use it. So they're going to pull off the rafters and then check them and see if they're still good. One one of the things that he recommended, and they turned it down, the men of the congregation, was air conditioning, because it does get hot in the building. But we kind of got together and looked at it and decided that it would be better that if we, instead of putting a ceiling in the church building, leave it open so then the heat can rise, and then also do a ridge vent. And that will help keep the heat down, because you always get a breeze in that building. So it's just getting that airflow up, and then the distance for the heat, that'll help out. So he also did in this report, the expenses of it. And so for the roof, we're looking at, and this is all EC currency. So it's $45,000 for the roof, and that's EC. And that's going to include demolishing the roof that's up there, what's left up there, putting new wood that's treated up there, decking, insulation, and then new metal for that. The ceiling, if they decided to put a ceiling in there, it would be $19,000. And so we're kind of against that just for heat. It's better to let the heat rise up into a high roof than put a ceiling and cap it above you at 8 feet. Windows. These are going to be the Chinese windows. That's going to be $9,482. And then the doors are going to be $4,101. The electrical installation, this includes taking out the wire, putting new wires in, converting it over to new sockets. It's going to be $9,518. And it comes to a grand total of $97,750. Now this is EC. So that's what? 2.7. US dollars is 2.7. So this isn't a goal that we can't reach, and we have always been able to help them out. One of the things that's very important right now is there is a tax break on all this for March 18th. Okay, so this tax break goes to March 18th. And so if we can get this done before then, we don't pay taxes on any of this, which is going to be a major, major expense. That helps us out a lot. And so that's all I've got.
We can make copies of that material that Travis mentioned, the report that was done by the civil engineer for the church, if you want to see it. The end number in US dollars that we're looking at for rebuilding the Massac Church building is $55,000 US to get them back up and running. We're adding about $10,000 to $15,000 to get the structure back in place in good hope. So the total number we're looking at is $70,000 to complete these two projects. That's what we're looking at. I didn't have a chance to catch Marvin to see how far we're at. We're already towards that goal, but we will publish that very soon. So we have a $70,000 goal. We have a deadline of March 18th. You already heard Wallace mention how high the tariffs and duties are that are brought into the island. And so we want to try and accomplish this before that deadline, because we do have some materials that we'll need to send down to them, other materials they can get on the island. So time is of the essence. If you have a device with you, you probably received an email from us. I set it up to be scheduled to be delivered at the end of the presentation. It includes a link to the video, the 6-minute video that we prepared for this. It includes a link to all the photos and video that you saw, plus more. It also includes a link to the interviews. We did full-length interviews with Elijah and Joe, several church members, Edward. For the sake of time, I just had to pick 2 and include them. And of course, you heard that powerful message from Elijah talking about, as a parent, it hits me, having to tell your children that, if we die tonight, we die as a family. And, Bob obviously, conveyed the emotion of what we saw. Wallace did as well. Travis did as well. We look forward to continuing to support the good brethren in Massac. Bob had one more thing that he wanted to add, and then we're going to close off and transition into our worship time. We had hoped to have a time of question and answer. That did not happen today. So catch us. If you have questions about what you've read, about what you've heard, if you want a copy of this material so you can review it for yourself, Travis did mention that that was a generous gift that the civil engineer, who's a member of the church in Roseau in Castle Comfort, gave to Joe. $5,000 EC, almost $2,000 US is what he usually gets for one of those reports. And he gave it to Joe out of respect and love. And I thought that was a great gift. Bob?
This brother that provided that report at no cost was a member of the Castle Comfort Church that was washed off of its foundation. And so he knows exactly what Joe and him are experiencing. I wanted to say something about Edward. Some of you have asked about Edward Garraway because we don't say a whole lot about Edward. Edward is up in the area of Good Hope by himself. His wife passed away several years ago. Let me tell you something about Edward so you can come on board and know where he is. When we first went down there, Brother Samson and I went, and we were introduced to Edward. Joe wanted us to meet him. He was preaching in Marigot, which is a large village. And we had gone up and visited with him. His wife had made some coffee and had some cookies that we had eaten. And we got to talking, and Edward said he hadn't received any support, and I think it was like 4 months. And we'd asked him who his sponsoring congregation was, and it was a congregation out of Little Rock, Arkansas. And so we didn't know what to say. We left him some funds because he hadn't had any support in several months. He had children. We got back, we investigated and contacted the church in Little Rock, and lo and behold, the deacon who was over the financial affairs had been pocketing the money that was supposed to be going to Edward. And so, so we took him on to help, and we've been helping ever since. Edward does not demand a whole lot. He's very good in sending his reports. I want you to keep Edward in your prayers. His wife, as I said, passed away. His children are all gone from the island now. He's there by himself. They live in England. Some of them live in England. Some of them live in some of the other islands close by. But Edward continues in the work there in Good Hope. And that little building, now they're meeting in his home, which is right there at that little building when we interviewed him. They're meeting in his home right now, but that little building, we need to give consideration to that too. So just keep that in the back of your minds as we seek to raise these funds, the good that we can do. That's all. Thank you.
Dismissed.